Hey y'all, shenanigans. University of Michigan just got fined a whole lot of money for this whole sign stealing thing and a couple of other items. Let's deep dive into what happened. It's fascinating. Okay, first, the NCAA Committee on Infractions has ruled that there have been multiple violations. And so the violations are this. Over 3 years, there are violations involving off-campus in-person scouting. That's the whole sign stealing investigation. Okay. Impermissible recruiting inducements. Some recruiting violations got thrown into the mix. Violations involving head coach responsibility, or perhaps lack of responsibility in this case. The violations involve individuals or multiple individuals' failure to cooperate with the investigation, and the University of Michigan's failure to monitor. Okay, so the scouting violations orchestrated by Connor Stallions, who's no longer at the university, and the head coach responsibility violations and failure to cooperate are considered all level 1 charges. Okay, so they get the maximum potential penalty for that. Now, Sharon Moore also was determined to fail to cooperate, and the University of Michigan's failure to monitor, both of those are level 2 charges. Okay, and there were 2 other former assistants, Jesse Minter and Steve Clinkscale. They settled. So we don't know what that was about or what those findings were, but they settled, and so they're done. Okay, so that's what the violations. Sign stealing, which was a huge thing, okay, recruiting violations, and the university not paying attention, the head coach not taking responsibility, and people failing to cooperate. Okay, so the penalties are what get you. So there are 5 different penalties. 4 years of probation for the football program, okay. So now we get into money after that. The second item is $50,000, which is immaterial to University of Michigan, plus 10% of the football budget. And so I've seen various reporting. Some people report the football budget being upwards of $70 million. So if that's the case, that's an additional $7 million. So that's the first financial penalty. The second financial penalty is a fine equivalent to the anticipated loss of postseason competition revenue for 2025 and 2026. So when people do the math across all those things, the estimates are anywhere from $20 to $30 million is the fine to University of Michigan. Now, interestingly, they chose a fine instead of removing the ability for postseason play as a penalty, and we'll have to discuss that more in a little while. Now, so those are the first 2 things. 4 years of probation, $50,000 plus 10% of the football budget, and a fine equivalent to anticipated lost revenue, postseason revenue for 25 and 26, anywhere from $20 to $30 million, depending on how you count, depending on who's counting. Okay. They also received a penalty for 25% reduction in official football visits for this season, 25-26, okay, and a 14-week prohibition on recruiting communications during the prohibition period. So they're not able to reach out back and forth and talk to athletes during the recruiting period for this 14-week block, and they have to reduce their number of official visits by 25%. So those are the penalties, okay? Now, that's at the university level. Now, Connor Stallions, who was the orchestrator of this very elaborate scheme, received an 8-year show cause order. And essentially a show cause is essentially a hiring ban for the NCAA. Okay, so 8 years, he's out of college sports. Okay, Jim Harbaugh received a 10-year show cause order that begins at the end of the current show cause order. Okay, that doesn't expire until 2028. So Harbaugh is out till 2038. Now, he probably left because all this stuff was happening. Okay, and is never coming back. So this may be a penalty without a consequence. Okay. Now, Denard Robinson, who was a part of the whole recruiting violations piece, received a 3-year show cause. And Sharon Moore, the current head coach, got a 2-year show cause that involves a 3-game suspension. 2 of those games will be this year, and 1 of the games will be next year. Now, when Harbaugh received his suspensions a few years ago, those were just suspensions for the game. The rules have now changed, and so a suspension includes the practice as well. So he's 2 weeks on vacation essentially because he can't attend practice and he can't attend the games. That's for 2 years, 2 times this year, and a 3rd suspension next year. So, query whether you think that's a good solution or good outcome. We'll talk later about all the things on this sign stealing thing, which is an elaborate thing. But the reason the NCAA indicated that they did not provide any post-season restrictions on participation, which level 1 violations do qualify for, is because they indicated that they did not want to penalize the athletes for behavior of coaches who were no longer there. So the athletes were not a part of this sign stealing scheme, and therefore the current athletes should not be penalized. I also think in the back of their minds, they're thinking about all the money these athletes are getting paid. Bryce Underwood's getting $12 million to be the quarterback at Michigan. Have him sit unavailable for postseason play because of some tomfoolery that some coaches did a few years back. Prior NCAA commissions on infractions would have said, yes, everybody sits. The current environment is no. So we'll talk more about what they did. I just wanted to give you a brief update on what went down and what the penalties were. And so you can start thinking about whether you think those are sufficient penalties for what happened. More later. I always want to hear what you think. Bye.